Good afternoon, everyone.
Boa tarde a todos. Esta sessão é sobre o impacto do peering em África, que é o principal tema desta AFPIF. Portanto, lições aprendidas. No painel tenho Michel McCain, do Desenvolvimento de Negócios de Aterco, Carl Spencer, diretor da AFIX, Mathieu Chingwende, da Liquid, tem Riaz Bachani, da Angani, e temos Abdoulaye Sowe, do ponto de troca de tráfego do Gâmbia. Vamos considerar as perspectivas, vamos falar do passado e vamos também considerar o que deve ser feito.
To improve the peering in Africa to have the maximum impact possible. So I will call upon Carl Spencer, who will be talking about the Africa XP survey report, and we move forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Does this work? Great. Right. Hello, everybody. As he mentioned, my name is Kyle Spencer, and I'll briefly introduce myself for the sake of those who don't know me. I have been living in Uganda for the last 7 years. And in Uganda, well, and also here, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm representing the African IXP Association. And I'm also, we're also a member of the Internet Exchange Federation, which is sort of a global collection of regional IXP associations that I think Bajal might talk more about in an upcoming talk. And as I said, I'm a director of the Uganda Internet Exchange Point. Please peer with us. That's our website. If you'd like to talk about that, please get in touch with me. And I'm also director of the ICT Association of Uganda, and have a project called Gamers Nights in Uganda, which is focused on hosting local game servers in the country in partnership with Liquid Telecom. And we're now starting to see gamers from Kenya playing against gamers in Rwanda and South Africa and stuff like that. So it really drives demand for low latency networks. And feel free to check out the site. You can find it on Google, and we've got some information about what we do. And until recently, I was working in a prototyping lab for UNICEF in Kampala. So the African IXP Association, just as a brief introduction, is a group of Internet Exchange Point operators from across Africa. And we're trying primarily to just create an enabling environment for exchange point operators and to help improve connectivity within the continent. We were established in 2013 at AFPIF in Casablanca. There were some previous meetings before that, but that was sort of the foundational one. The coordinators right now are myself from Uganda and Nishal Goberdan from South Africa. Of Jinx fame, and we're all, as I mentioned, we're a member of the Exchange Federation. We joined in June 2014. So here's an overview of our region. We have 54 countries in Africa, according to the African Union. We've got 33 IXPs in 25 countries, and you can see them on this map. The oldest IXP started in 1996. That was the Johannesburg Internet Exchange Point. The newest one is Liberia, which launched 2 weeks ago. And our approximate traffic levels, which I'll get to in a bit more detail later, are around over 160 gigabits. So as part of AFIX, we launched an annual survey of exchange points in the region to try to get a better understanding of our region, and also so that we can help others get a better understanding of our region. This is the first year we've done it, and luckily 73% of exchanges responded. That's 24 out of 33 total. This is good, but it's still got a significant margin of error, particularly because we're dealing with small numbers. But we're trying to do the best we can to sort of analyze that data. And it's hard to gather and verify the data. Getting people to respond is difficult, and getting accurate information and wording the questions right is tough. And where possible, we incorporate other data sets into this presentation for historical comparison, but those also suffer from similar difficulties and issues. So here's a slide that shows the number of exchange points in Africa by year. And you can see that the graph is nicely up and to the right. And in particular, We've had 10 new exchange points since 2011, so it would be interesting to find out more about initiatives that might have surrounded that time period that might have catalyzed the launch of some of these exchanges. This is about governing entity types. So in 2008, which is the bar on the left, you can see that industry association not-for-profits were the dominant model. And private not-for-profits, government, and academic hosted exchanges were very, very minor components of the whole. Fast forward to 2015, and you can see that we've seen a lot of growth in private not-for-profits and government-run exchanges, while still seeing a healthy collection of industry association not-for-profits. A little bit about facilities and who controls them. We can see that approximately 62% of IXPs are assumed to be in neutral facilities. We need to word these questions a bit differently in the next version, but based on what we got back, that's our guess. In 2008, Machuki did some research and found out that approximately 50% were in neutral facilities. All private not-for-profit internet exchanges appear to be located in neutral facilities based on the responses that we got. And let's see, amenities, what's going on inside these facilities. We can see based on the responses that facilities have greatly improved in general. Almost everybody's got power backup and air conditioning. And you can see that security is quite good, video surveillance, fire suppression. Government IXPs appear to have the best security and amenities on average. But as I mentioned in the bottom in bold, your mileage may vary. I mean, this is one of those things where people can, you know, they might report that they've got air conditioning, but when you turn up, it's not plugged in or it doesn't work or whatever. So this is based on survey results. A little bit about the environment that exchanges operate in with regard to like commercial services available in the same facility. You can see that relatively few exist in environments where you can get rack space and wholesale transit and that other activity happening around it. But we do find that IXPs and facilities with commercial services available had significantly higher traffic levels and number of peers on average. But 50% of those were in South Africa, so correlation is not causation and all that. And there's other factors that can play into it. This is about ports and membership fees. We tried to get some data on that. Most IXPs charge fees or plan to in the future. And you can see on these graphs, we broke it down by governance model. So the top graph is government IXPs, private not-for-profit IXPs, academia, industry association not-for-profit. Monthly fees were more common than annual fees. Fees are significantly more common in industry association not-for-profits. That's the bar on the bottom. You can see that that really stands out in terms of the number of exchanges that exist that charge. And it'd be interesting for us to dig into that and figure out why. The only interesting thing I found was that they're on average older by about 4 years, 5 years. And all private not-for-profit IXPs with no plan to charge fees, which is that second light green bar on the right, had other sources of revenue and are in facilities with commercial services available like transit and rack space and so on. Data centers, basically. Here's about staffing, whether they're run by volunteers or paid staff. You can see that government IXPs almost all have paid staff and also don't involve volunteers. And industry association not-for-profits utilize the most volunteers in what we found. Some industry association not-for-profit IXPs charge fees, but are also run by volunteer staff. So we found that interesting, and it would be good. We're gonna try to look a little bit more into what's happening there. Now, full or part-time staff, we found that approximately half of IXPs have full-time staff, which is a pretty good indication. I don't think that was the case recently. Really. What's obvious is that full-time staff correlates with paid staff. So if you're like a government thinking about how do I get more full-time staff and grow my exchange, well, if you don't have a sustainability model, that's going to be required by what we're seeing. Industry association not-for-profits and private not-for-profits have the best indicators for sustainable growth overall. That's sort of an assessment of what we saw across the graphs that I just showed you previously, full-time staff, sustainability, healthy ecosystem, and that sort of thing. So value-added services around the exchange, we can see that this actually looks quite good. And in particular, we've seen a lot of growth in DNS. Back in 2008, there were only 3 root DNS servers at exchange points, and now we've got like 15. And IXPs that generally have value-added services are at about 87.5% today, and we're at about 66% in 2008. So that's positive indications there. This is a slide about peering policies. So back in 2008, which is the bar on the left, mandatory multilateral peering, which is that big yellow block, was very dominant. And that was predicted to be a major inhibitor to growth in internet exchanges at the time. And as we've seen, based on the bar on the right in 2015, I think that assessment was correct, because mandatory multilateral peering seems to have sort of broken down and fallen away as the dominant peering policy. And now we're seeing a lot of multilateral peering, but not mandatory. So you've got maybe a route server and allow some bilateral peering on the side. The composition of IXPs, we're seeing a lot of diversity now. We've got a lot of IXPs with government networks, content provider networks, research and education networks. The total number of networks connected based on the information we got was 563, so that's an at least. And in 2008 it was 129, so that's approximately quadrupled, which is great. The highest number of networks at a single IXP was 115. It was only 24 in 2008, so that's also very significant. And the average number of networks connected is approximately 23 and a half, and it was 11 in 2008, so a lot of growth. So here's a slide about traffic. This is really one of the last slides. And there's a lot of challenges when trying to figure out how much traffic is going through exchanges. And I'll try to illustrate that. And I put some tips sort of on here to point to the right things. So Machuki found in 2008 that there's approximately 160 megabits. And then in the red line, that's EuroIX's data. And you can, that's a pretty accurate look. But it's the problem is none of the data sets include all IXPs in Africa, even ours. As I said, we got like 73% turnout. And not all IXPs even publish statistics, but 83% do, so it's not terrible. But you can see that on the right, for example, the last data point from EuroIX and ours are significantly different. Well, around 2012, 2013, they added an IXP to their data set that includes transit in their statistics. And so that caused a major difference. And that same IXP did not respond to our survey, so we've got a 100 gigabit difference in our statistics. So you can see some of the challenges when trying to put this together. Different measurements also, like some of them are monthly peak, some people look at daily peak, so trying to correlate these things and put these things together is a little bit touchy. But it's at least 160 gigabits from what we can see. And again, that includes some IXPs with transit traffic, so there's a bit of a debate as to how to measure and what's the accurate measurement and so on, but that's what it is. Almost all IXPs have websites. This is great, and 83% of them are under their own CCTLDs. Most IXPs receive and rely on donations. This survey captured some of that information, but the way we asked the questions and some of the feedback we got, that didn't turn out to be something we could really report on with any accuracy. So I've omitted that, and we're going to try to improve that in next year's survey. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kyle. I know he has been gathering this information for the past 18 months, so it has been very difficult, but we really commend your efforts to do that. So the next one will be Abdoulaye Sowe from Gambia, will be presenting next.
Good afternoon. My name is Abdoulaye Sow. I'm from Gambia. I'm the administrator of the Serekunda Internet Exchange Point. I know some of you might not know where Gambia is, so I'll start with showing you in the map. This small stretch you see inside Senegal, it's called Gambia. We are surrounded completely by Senegal, except the Atlantic Ocean. So we are inside Senegal. And if you look at the African map there, you will see where it is in West Africa. Okay, Serekunda Internet Exchange Point, CISC, is the first and the only internet exchange point in the Gambia. Our AS is 37698, and it was established in July 2014. Actually, it's a product of the AU Access project. I think we are among the first to come live, from the AU Access project. At the moment, we have 7 peers peering with each other. 5 are local, and 2 international PCH, basically. It is registered as a not-for-profit organization and operated with executive body. We have an executive committee that is responsible for the affairs of the exchange, and it's run by 3 administrators, 2 technical and 1 administrator. The government, through the ministry and the regulator, actually they facilitated the formation of the IXP. They were very instrumental by bringing the operators together, by even giving us seed money to start, because we were relying on the AU equipment, but due to logistics, it was late to come. So the government was able to give us a rack, a switch, and a server, and everything was configured and set up even before AU equipment came in. So they were very instrumental. So this is during the setup. Here you see the 2 technicians with support from Nick of INEX, Ireland Exchange, who were our twin partner. Then this was after the setup. You have there myself, Aisatu, Nick, and Mohammed. Okay, so what was there before we had the exchange? Before the exchange, we had operators, but including the incumbent, and the incumbent had the license for both data and voice. So all operators were connected to the incumbent, and the incumbent was getting transit from Sonatel in Senegal. So with the coming of the ACE project, which is the Africa Coast to Europe fiber optic project, there was some liberalization, and some of the operators were given data gateway licenses, so they had their own transit to Europe, and I guess this necessitated the need for an IXP. So we had actually, this is like a topology of the IXP. We had the 2 switches, the peering LAN, and we have the management LAN, and we have a route server that is peering with everyone that connects there. So what impact does the exchange have? Sadly, not much, and due to obvious reasons. We have seen some traffic, in the exchange, reaching about 50 megabits. Latency also have been reduced between the operators, the local operators, from 60 to 100 to 5 to 10 milliseconds. But in terms of improvement in performance, we have not realized much improvement in performance. Okay, and in terms of cost also, there has not been any reduction in cost since the coming of the exchange. We have not realized that yet. And the reason for that is because we still have transit traffic. We have very small local traffic. So because of that, we have not realized much difference in the pricing. But the good thing is, at least we have an exchange. It's a start. We managed to bring all the operators together, and they are peering. So, you have to start, before you fly, you have to start walking, then running, then you fly. So we are in the walking stage. This is just a snapshot of our traffic graphs, the day graph, the weekly graph, monthly graph, and the yearly graph. And as I said, we have reached a max of 50 meg. So what are our limitations, the problems that we have? Basically, the major challenge is lack of content. I think this has been talked about in the morning. This is true for most African IXPs anyway. But we don't have local content, we don't have CDNs, no locally significant contents. Or even the content providers in the Gambia are hosting outside the Gambia. So you'll see that most of the websites are being hosted outside the Gambia. And this reason for that is cost, because it's cheaper, far cheaper to host outside than to host locally. So because of the high cost of electricity and the need for cooling, it is very, very expensive to host locally in the Gambia. And there are no available carrier neutral data centers, no data centers also in the Gambia. So, and we have only one cable, that is the ACE, that is landed in the Gambia. So these are actually some of the limitations that we are having. So what are we doing about the limitations? We know our number one problem is traffic and content. So what we are doing is trying to get remote CDNs. We are trying to host remote CDNs in our exchange, like the Google Cache, like the Akamai's, and already we have actually been talking to Google. In fact, the servers are already with us, installed and everything. We're just waiting for a router to put it live. So maybe in a month or two time, the Google Cache will be online. We also talking to Akamai. We have already signed the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement with them, which they have given to their legal team. And hopefully before the end of the year also that might come online. We already have PCH, so that helps on the DNS and root server searches. And on the local front, we are trying to do some sensitization to make sure that people understand the need to have local content, and maybe talk to the content providers that are hosting outside to try and bring their content in the Gambia. In fact, there is a planned workshop next month on harnessing local content development that we are going to conduct. So what have we learned in our one-year journey? We learned that it's not expensive in terms of money to set up an exchange point. You can start small and grow. What is really needed is the political will. Even the know-how is not a big challenge because you have experts who are really available to help. But the political will is the most important thing. And we also learned that neutrality is key for the success of an IXP, because most of these people that you want to bring together to peer are competitors in the market. You have 2, 3 ISPs that are struggling for a small number of customers, and you want to bring them together. Sometimes if they don't trust you, it becomes difficult. Okay. We have also realized that getting traffic to the exchange, it's even more of a challenge than establishing the exchange itself. That is something we learned, and that sadly, the big boys, those who have the content, they tend to bully the small ones. Before they pair with you, they say you need to have traffic, but you cannot have traffic also without pairing with them. So it's like chicken and egg. Now, what's the feature of the exchange? We will continue to build content in order to generate traffic by hosting remote CDNs and encouraging local content development. We'll also try to develop strategies to have some value-added services so that we can get more traffic in our exchange. Okay. Before I conclude, I must take this opportunity to thank these people who are very, very instrumental in making sure that we have SIPs up and running. That is Nick Hilliard of INEX. He flew over to Gambia and make sure help in the setup and configuration. Nishal need no introduction, and Michuki, then Jane Coffin. Anytime you need anything, you just tell them, and then they will find a way of helping them. So I really want to thank them. And finally, I want to thank the AFIX community for the welcome. They are very, very welcoming. If you come in as a new IXP, they are always welcoming and encouraging. So thank you very much for the.
Thank you, Zoe. Up next will be Matthew from Liquid. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's interesting, my colleagues in London can pronounce my name Chigwende more than my African colleagues here. My name is Matthew Chigwende. I come from just across the border in Zimbabwe. I tried to see if there were any Zimbabweans here. I think there's only one. It says a lot about cross-border. I've been with Liquid Telecom for the past 6 years. My title is Head of Data Networks. I'm based in the London office. I'm here on the panel with our Director of Network Strategy, Ben Roberts. I'll be talking about the lessons learned in the last 5 years of peering. This is my 5 out of 6 AFPIF attendance. Okay, I'll give you a brief overview of the Liquid Telecom. Liquid Telecom is a group. You see some of these logos. These are all the companies that we have. Sorry, I remove it. Okay, so basically, Liquid Telecom has a fiber network stretching from South Africa all the way in Central Africa, Botswana, Zambia, DRC. Then we've got East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and we've got operations in Tanzania, as shown there. So this is like the stretch of Liquid Telecom, and it's one seamless network connecting all those POPs around East, Central, and Southern Africa. Coming closer to home, to the subject we are talking about, as Liquid Telecom, we love peering, and I would say we are present in more African internet exchanges than most of the people I've been talking to on this conference. It's not bragging, it's just facts. We're at NAP, Jinx, and Kenya Internet Exchange is the biggest, where we have most of our traffic there. Then we are also present in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, Zambia, Uganda, Rwanda, and also in Cape Town. We support internet exchange providers, internet exchange points. We participate in them, and we also, as a network provider, we also provide access to these. In addition to peering in Africa, we peered links AM6, DKIX as well. Of course, all the fibers from Africa, we use the East Coast and the East and the West coast of around Africa, and they always converge into Europe, and we see London as being strategic for us. We also got undersea fibers to Fujairah in the Middle East, and we are also peering in United Arab Emirates at Smart Hub. Now, over the past years, from 2010, we have been actively trying to peer and openly doing so. And our first peering point was Zinx, that's in Zimbabwe. I mean, we already had like a presence in links in London, where we had satellite communications into most Africa. Then when we built our own fiber, we started peering in Zimbabwe Internet Exchange. The following year, we were already in South Africa and Zambia, and found ourselves by 2012 we're in Botswana. 2013, with the acquisition and growth in East Africa, we were in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. Then in 2014, we started expanding more in Europe as peering becomes more and more important for us. So, and also South Africa, NAP, and I can say now, I think in Africa, NAP Africa is the biggest of exchange point for our traffic. True. Then this year, we have even expanded further, like we have now Smart Hub, and we are in Cape Town as well. And I want to make it a point that before I leave Mozambique, would have something happening in Mozambique as well. Okay, this is just statistics we didn't collect this information, but people are collecting information and they're looking what we are doing. So RENESYS peering index shows that we are in Africa very close to top 10, and in the world we are actually in the top 100 of the most peered networks. This is our AS30844. Okay, to get into peering, as Liquid Telecom, we are peering openly. Of course, we don't peer with our customers, but every exchange point we go in, we always peer, and we peer openly. But peering openly in so many different regions has its challenges as well. First of all, we see that when you peer at different exchange points, you start having some routing issues. It's always easy if you got a single transit point and a single peering point. But imagine we peer with a customer or with a partner in Kenya and also a partner in London. Depending on what they do with their prefixes and how they decide to advertise, we start having, sometimes they advertise aggregates and de-aggregates at different places. So instead of exchanging traffic, say in Kenya, we end up maybe seeing more specific prefixes in London. Therefore, we prefer to exchange, we'll end up exchanging that traffic in London. But of course, if these African traffic would rather exchange it in Africa. So these are some of the problems. So we've got engineers, we've got teams that are always looking into this. So these are the routing problems they're always looking at. Then of course we have these UPERF issues. Some peers also want symmetric traffic flows. It's a security thing, but what happens is some networks could be, say, in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. We receive traffic in Cape Town, but we may prefer to give it to them back in Johannesburg. But if they have some symmetric need on their network, so that some security systems that govern traffic in and out, we might end up blocking some very useful traffic. So then we also have cross-border capacity management issues. When we are having exchange points, or when you are peering at different exchange points in different countries, we need to make sure that traffic from, like, say, if we peer, say, in Johannesburg, or our Southern Africa traffic, we can't, all our Southern Africa traffic will need to be taken to Johannesburg. So it's actually upon us as Liquid Telecom to make sure that there is enough cross-border links to take that traffic there. So it comes to capacity management as well, to make sure that we've got enough cross-border links to take our traffic across borders to the closest peering point. Then of course, it's the same point as well with CDNs. If we can't have a CDN in every country, but so we have to make sure that we've got enough regional capacity within our network to take traffic to where the CDN is. And when it comes to peering, there are of course the always obvious benefits of latency and all. But before you get to the benefits, there are some, I would call them some big elephants that need moving. Especially the incumbents. Pairing with an incumbent, we found it one of the most difficult things. But however, we realized that sometimes it takes some time to get an elephant to a party. But of course, if the elephant does come to the party, of course, it will be a big party. So yeah, we had our own challenges getting some of these big elephants to come and peer with us. And we have some, actually this is an example of what happened this year This is in Zimbabwe. For the past few years, we're not pairing with one of the incumbent in Zimbabwe. And as of, I think it can show that 12 August this year, we managed to pair with them, and the latency came down from 216 milliseconds to 8 milliseconds. I mean, traffic was going all the way and exchanging in London, but now we are exchanging right in Harare, which is good. Along the way, we did meet some challenges and we did learn some things, and we have stuff that we have learned from our own networks. We have stuff that we've learned from studying or other people studying what's happening in the area that we operate. This slide is just, it's a study from telegeography. I'm sure you're going to see more of this tomorrow on a separate presentation. But the interesting thing about this is that intra-Africa transit capacity is consistently higher than Africa to Europe. So you can see that Africa to Europe traffic is increasing ever so much each year as opposed to Africa to Europe. They are both increasing, but intra-Africa traffic is increasing much further. There's much higher percentage. So all this is the benefit of peering and connection of telcos to ISPs and of course CDNs. One observation we've made on our network is that this one is when the latency is lowered, the throughput increases, and we start seeing local traffic growing. So this is one we have noted from the time we started peering with a certain network in South Africa, and over a period of time, the traffic started growing very significantly. Okay, this is, I don't know if you can see the percentages properly. This is just analyzing the liquid telecom traffic. We can see that 25% of liquid telecom traffic is actually from African peering. The other quarter is from peering in London, Germany, and like AM6, DIC6, and in Fujairah. Then the CDNs is, I would say, another quarter as well. And 22% of our traffic is actually coming from external IP transit. Now I would want to compare, just for you to visualize it, I just want to compare the transit traffic and the Africa peering traffic. Now you can see, if we just compare, we have a 54 to 46 ratio of African peering traffic to what we actually get as transit. And now I want to show you what happens if we add the CDNs in the mix as well. So if we pair and put content networks, now it just shows 72% of our traffic is actually local to Africa. So I know we are talking about reaching the 80% mark by 2020. Well, for liquid telecom, I don't think we need to wait until 2020. So the writing is on the wall. Okay. Just one observation as well we made is about some traffic balancing surprises. You know, I was talking of those elephants. This is one big elephant as well. It was very difficult for us to get peering here, but now if you look closely, you see that the incoming traffic is actually, most of the traffic is actually incoming into liquid telecom. I would say for this elephant, they needed us more than we needed them. But well, it's always difficult to get these to party. Then another observation we made as well is that, as much as we are trying to peer, there are also efforts by some of our users to avoid this peering. In other words, they don't want to use the locally available networks, but they would rather go transit. I mean, this is mostly for some, maybe customers, or some of our customers may want to use some content that is not available for them because of their region or their IP addresses. So what they'll do is they create VPNs, and then they pretend like they are in London or somewhere else so that they access that content. So as much as we're trying to peer, but there are some customers that try as much as possible to avoid those peering points. So it might kind of defeat the whole purpose. But I think a solution to this is to get the providers of content to come to Africa and have their services available to Africa and in Africa. The last point there is what we talked about as well, about some intellectual property laws. Of course, with streaming business, that of course, if I find a DVD in downtown Maputo that is costing $1, why would I stream it for $5 on a paid channel? So these are some of the challenges that we see, and always affecting peering and content networks. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Up next, let me call Riaz to come from Angani. He's the CEO of Angani, and he will be talking about cloud computing solutions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Before I start, how many here do not know the generator analogy of generators and cloud services? So everyone knows the analogy. No. The analogy is basically when electricity was invented in the late 1800s, thereabouts, there was no electric grid, right? So everyone who wanted electricity, if you were running a factory or a shop, you had to have your own generator to be able to generate your own electricity. What happened eventually is electric grids were built, the cables were laid, and now if you wanted electricity, you would go and tap it from the electric pole outside your house. The same thing applies for computers. It's just that we've grown up in an era where computers are all fairly new. So if you wanted to run an application in your business, you had to go buy a server, put it under your desk, and run your application off that server. What the world is moving to is cloud is the grid of computing. Right? So if you today want to run an application, you can go to our website, sign up for a server, the server will be created for you, or the space will be created for you, and that's where you can run your application. You don't have to physically go out and buy your own server. So the landscape is shifting drastically, but if you compare that analogy, you can see where the future of computing is going to, right? And that's what Angani does. That's the market that we identified, and so there was a gap in, and we started Angani for that reason, to provide cloud services locally here on the continent. What have we done? We invested in the grid. Now, we didn't do this the way you would normally do it. We're a startup. We don't have a lot of capital. So we started the way all of us started building ISPs on the continent. We started with the gray market, got the cheapest servers we could get, high density servers, put them in, got our AS numbers, and connected everything and started running our services. Typically, if you were to go and purchase a cloud solution from a vendor, you're going to spend $3 to $5 million. To date, we've spent less than 10% of that on our network. Yet we have 2 redundant zones. So we run our cloud co-located in 2 different data centers in Kenya. We record a consistent uptime of 99.95%. And we have capacity of thousands of servers and a petabyte of data, which is constantly growing. We run various services on our platform, but the key thing is the type of people who trust us with their data are doing all sorts of cool things on the cloud. So apart from your normal email, hosting, domains, we also have certain applications people are running. So there are certain bus companies that sell all their tickets using our cloud. So if you go walk into a bus office, chances are they're using Angani to sell and issue the ticket to you. The bus actually can't leave because they also print the manifest from Angani. So we have to stay up, otherwise buses don't leave. We do teleradiology. We have customers who are able to take scans from X-ray machines, have them stored on the cloud, and then radiologists are able to view those scans, give the reports, and the doctor is sent a notification without you having to hold a physical X-ray film in your hand. We also run TV stations off our cloud. We have a media product, and that's what results in us having lots of storage, is so that we can store all these terabytes of video content in Kenya and help these guys launch TV stations and video on demand sites off our cloud. How do we categorize our success? We're actually, what motivated us was the whole localization of content. We know that Google, Akamai, Cloudflare is going to be able to cache up to, say, 60% of content locally. And then we still have all the websites that are Kenyan websites, African websites that are hosted outside the country because no one hosts in country anymore. So that's what we want to provide, is a platform for everyone to be able to host this content locally in a reliable manner. And as a result, we believe that we can localize another 20% of content locally. From the time we started, which was early last year, we're pushing around 40 megabits a second to KXP with bursts of 100 Mbps all the time because of the various media people uploading their content. And we see this continuously growing. We're the number 4 local hosting provider, if you look at the analysis done by DIN. And this has been over a period of 1 year. The people who are in the top 10 have all been around for at least 10 years. So what enabled us to, be where we are and to see the successes that we've seen? The first element of that is KXP. It was affordable to go and get initially a 100 Mbps port and then upgrade to a gigabit port at KXP. There's an open peering policy, so even us as a smaller provider were able to, from day one, get our KXP membership. The reliability of KXP played a big role because all our services are local, using various ISPs. If KXP was not reliable, our customers would not be trusting us with the services that we run. There's quite a bit of fiber penetration in Kenya. There's at least 3 long-distance players, and there's 5 to 6 players in the metro fiber space. So the fiber allows us to roll out our services better. Now, this is a challenge I'll sort of come to when we're talking about challenges, but if a customer has a 1 megabit link and is trying to back up even 100 gigabytes of data, that's going to take him 200 hours, theoretically. Practically, it will take him even longer. So as operators, that's kind of one of our requests to put things out there. There's a lot of fiber in the ground. We need to open it up. We need to be selling different types of products. We can't be selling 1 megabit products if cloud is the future of computing. The other thing that enabled us to succeed is the reliability of data centers. There's East Africa Data Center where we co-located. That was the second data center that we moved into. And the first data center was Chancery in Nairobi. That reliability has enabled us to worry less about power going out or buying a UPS and putting it in our rack, which typically people end up doing. And instead we focus on just making sure our kit stays up. Now, that said, there's new data centers coming up, and I know we all talked about that yesterday and today. I have an interesting story to share, and this happened within the last month. One of the data centers we're in, not East Africa Data Center, we come one day and actually find that somehow, at some point in time, someone has moved our rack where all our equipment is in and left some cables exposed just because they wanted to access something or they were making space for a new customer or something, right? So, that's you can't move a rack. We've got disks in there that are high-speed spinning disks that can end up getting damaged. So we had a meeting with these guys, and we're like, guys, this is unacceptable. Like, how can you, in a data center, move a rack without maintenance notification, without anything? Like, what kind of a data center is that? And so we left it after the meeting. 2 days later, we get some pictures saying, we're sorry about moving your rack. We've moved it into the right position. So that's some of the things that are quite funny that we come across. But the bigger data centers, we see definitely there's a market for that. But we just see that having focus and having professionalism in whatever you do helps. So let's have data center operators focused on running proper data centers, network operators focused on running proper network, and cloud operators focused on providing good cloud services. Our unique proposition compared to what all other cloud providers do, and this is enabled by the previous slide, what I covered, open peering policy, lots of fiber, is we do not charge for bandwidth locally. So if you want to access our cloud, we charge you a flat fee for storing if you're storing any data, but we will not charge you for accessing it X amount of dollars per gigabyte etc. because we don't have to. If we fill up the gigabit port that we have, we'll go and get a 10 gig port and so on and so forth. So we don't need to charge people for network. And as a result, our cloud offering is very simple. There's no network component to our cloud offering. It's a simple compute or storage variable. So the lessons that we have learned, and the first lesson is the only way to get reliability, especially in our environments where you'll have the sort of data center stories I mentioned, is by having 2 of everything, preferably 3 if you can afford it. So we have 2 data centers, we have 2 ISPs, we have 2 nodes in each site. So we just invest a lot in redundancy, and this has enabled us to achieve the sort of uptimes we record. So you can see in the previous data center we were dropping below 99%, but since we moved into EADC. The only component that varies here is probably network connectivity. These are stats as measured from outside the country. The other thing is we do a lot of hosting. So one of the biggest lessons we learned is around proper security and processes for hosting providers. And this is why a lot of hosting providers stopped hosting in Africa and started hosting outside, is because they got a certain level of expertise and managed services from outside. If a host was broken into, there were processes, clear sort of defined processes, and your services would not be affected by spam or Joomla being broken into, etc. And that's lessons that we had to learn. We had to build a pretty good hosting platform where a lot of this stuff was automated in order for hosting providers in Kenya to be able to trust our hosting services. The challenges that we see cloud services facing, and this is the same thing that CDN providers face, the first challenge is regional connectivity. In an ideal environment, you want to set up a cloud node on the east coast of Africa, on the west coast of Africa, and on the south coast of Africa, and everything else is connected. A customer in Uganda can upload 100 terabytes of data without worrying about where the cloud is sitting. But that's not the case here, right? We struggled for 4 months trying to find an ISP in Kampala for a customer who would provide the customer affordable enough bandwidth that they could upgrade from 1 Mbps to something decent enough where they could store their data in Kenya. And that was a challenge. The lowest price we got to was $200 for internet. But to get from Kampala to Nairobi, the price was $250. Right? That's the complete inverse. So that's something that we need to figure out, is how the regional connectivity is going to work. Now we have a solution. We can basically put a cloud node in every country, which we'll probably end up doing. But that's not, probably how the cloud is built in the rest of the world. And then the other challenge is local loops. ISPs are still selling connectivity of 1 Mbps, 512 kbps. That doesn't work when you're trying to do backups and try to transfer data. So we need environments where operators, the fiber is there, can sell 10, 100 gigabit interfaces, and then it's up to the customer to use those. I know Liquid is doing some stuff. We're waiting for that product. And finally, the challenge we face is human resource. And if I talk to many of the guys in this room that we've been working with, I think everyone faces this challenge. The guys in this room are getting older and older and older, and we see very few younger people coming up. Sysadmins, network admins are going scarce, right? Everyone who's coming out of universities wants to be an Android web app developer. No one wants to be a sysadmin anymore. The way we're handling it is working with Kenya to try and get into the universities and really sort of, bring back the sysadmin, make Linux cool again, so that guys are equipped with the next tools to be able to run these systems, run these networks. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Riaz. Up next is Michelle. Michelle, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. So just to introduce myself, I'm Michelle from Terrico and NAP Africa. So I look after the business development within Terrico. Click. There we go. So I think just in terms of this kind of timeline, I actually want to take you kind of before this, and those of you who know me kind of know the story. So before Terrico, I owned a ISP for my sons, apparently. And at that period of time, we saw obviously, cloud was becoming a reality. But interestingly enough, peering wasn't becoming a reality. So I couldn't launch a cloud service. Voice services, the government had regulated interconnects, so I had no margins on voice services, and I had no margins on bandwidth because that was obviously dropping. So I decided to sell it to Jasco. Sorry, Echard. So I gave it to Echard for his sins. And then Lex, who I'd known for many years as the CEO of Terrico, invited me for a dinner and basically said, hey, come do this peering and co-location thing. And I thought, oh, that's awesome. Finally, I don't have to do something of 1,900 product line items. I can sell 3. Fantastic. Put a switch down. Andrew's there, knew him for many years, so he's pretty bright, so he'll do all the hard work, and I'll just run around and drink wine. So that was kind of my analogy. But little did I know, at 2012, my whole life was pretty much going to change, and I realized that data centers are really hard, and exchanges are even harder. So for those of you who I'm saying this in terms of lessons learned, is the build it and they will come attitude. It doesn't work. It's incredibly hard. So essentially, as you can see from 2012, we put a lot of focus around the exchange point and building the communities within Terrico, of which the exchange point being a really, really key driver of our co-location. And interestingly enough, you'll see in 2012, pretty much our space started to grow rapidly. Our client base started to grow rapidly on the co-location side and pretty much matched the number of members. So this is kind of last year's figures, but to give you an idea, we're sitting on 240 members at the moment with over 40 gigabits of peering traffic. And this has been in a 3-year space of time, which is fantastic. It actually shows that the market has changed, the attitude towards peering has changed, and some of the big elephants like Telkom, which is the monopoly in South Africa, has peered onto the exchange, which we all thought would never happen. So I like to show this kind of a slide because a lot of people feel that kind of your peering dilutes your interconnection revenue, and that's comes out a lot of the data centers. And this actually shows that peering promotes interconnection, which is fantastic from an internal side for the sales guys when they feel that they're losing interconnection revenue, but it's actually the other way around. So Nchuki asked me to actually put together a case study. So this is a large African bank, which I unfortunately can't mention names. But interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot more enterprises starting to peer directly onto the physical NAP Africa switch fabric. So if you have a look at this bank themselves, they were spending 700,000 Rand a month on transit. And as they peered onto NAP Africa, their peering increased, and obviously that cost disappeared, which then started to, and the Google guys actually picked up the ASN yesterday, put them in one of the top users of the actual exchange point itself, and they were actually able to launch innovative products such as come to me, move your banking to me, and I will then give you X amount of free bandwidth as an example. Another great example around peering and the peering differences is ComAir, the Kalula guys. They peered directly onto the physical exchange, and they told me a story where they run a whole bunch of specials via a website. And essentially what happened there is before they peered, they ran their special and they had 1,500 dropped calls on the actual call desk. Moved into Terrico, started peering, and they had 34 agents sitting dormant. So you can imagine they're panicking. No one's buying their special. Why doesn't anyone want to fly in Kalula? And they actually had a look. It was all done through website traffic. And this goes back to what a number of my colleagues have actually mentioned here, is funny enough, people don't want to talk to people anymore. You know, if I get a special on Kalula, I want to log on, I want to buy that air ticket, and off I want to go. So their business changed overnight where they could use those 34 agents to start doing outbound sales. Fantastic story. So challenges. Wow, long list. So, and there should be, we need to drink more wine at the bottom. So essentially one of the big challenges that we coming around pretty much, and I'm seeing this a lot within our community itself, and this is on the data center and the IXP side, is we focus very heavily around the technical side. So I put a switch in, or I put a very expensive switch in, or I put Remco's $1,000 switch in, and we put it in and we say, hey guys, come to us, we're an IXP. And then everyone kind of goes, why does nobody want to peer with me? Because you need to get out there and speak to people in order to actually make it successful. And that's exactly the same with the colo market. So that's a big point. bandwidth is still an issue, and as you can see, a lot of the guys have raised that today. But one of the biggest issues that we're coming up with is the lack of technical skills. So, for example, where Andrew has to spend up to nearly a full day helping people do basic BGP and BGP configs. So what we've done to kind of get over that or around that is to start offering training. So you would think that's pretty weird as the colo IXP operator giving everyone IPv6 training or basic BGP skills training. At the end of the day, we need to think about that because we can't have someone like an Andrew sitting full day turning up one BGP session. So I think this one I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on. So it's kind of the where to from here. So we've got a whole bunch of members. It's really grown. We've got the monopoly to peer. And it's kind of what do we do as NAP Africa to kind of move forward as well as Terrico? Because we've got this massive facility. We're now doing another 10,000 square meters. So, you know, the story is really great. And essentially, if you look at the capital required to build this kind of an IXP as well as this kind of a data center, is we need to start looking at how do we support our neighbors. So neighbors being all the SADC countries, so your Swazilands, your Namibias, your Malawis, etc., where we've seen the content guys have done massive investment into Terrico and onto the exchange point and have made their content easily available. So how do we actually extend that further into our neighboring countries, which may not necessarily have the benefit of the large colo or the established exchange point? So we've seen a huge amount of growth by supporting those neighboring countries. So you'll see some quotes there from Paratus and from Skyband and the benefits they've seen out of peering directly onto NAP Africa. So this pretty much, and I don't want to use the word regional because then someone's going to throw something at me. I'm trying to say it best possible. But essentially, this is the new market for us as Terrico, as well as the exchange point, is kind of saying, we've got the space, we've got the power in terms of stable power, we've got the interconnection philosophies available, we've got the content in the data center. So where to from here is to start speaking to our neighboring countries and saying, hey guys, why don't you leverage off this? And it's fantastic, where guys like Liquid and CCOM and all these guys have done cross-border connectivity already. That's in place, it's live, it's stable. So it's very easy to actually, instead of going all the way to London now, you can actually just hop across the border, stick some kit down in Terrico, and then start pairing off to the physical exchange itself. So we've seen a huge amount of growth within this physical segment itself. So I was told that I'm only allowed to do this for 8 minutes. 2 more minutes. So that's a big growth area for us. The other big growth areas, we're starting to see a lot of remote peering connections. So that's not necessarily by putting kit into Terrico. So we've allowed a number of our members to actually start promoting to clients in their base to say, hey, I'll get you to NAP Africa. Let's say, for example, you're in Durban and you want to get to NAP Africa Johannesburg. Guys like Work Online would essentially sell you that national fiber connectivity. So now you can actually get to NAP Africa Johannesburg without having to do any additional hardware investment or worry about the skills around that. So we're seeing a huge amount of also growth within the remote peering connections. Sorry, Liquid also do the remote peering and CCOM. So a number of our members are actually adding that into their physical product suite and starting to onward sell that as a service, which is fantastic because that means our members are starting to promote our exchange, so which is a true essence of community. And I think the last key thing that we focused on is bringing more root servers into the physical exchange. So we're busy with VeriSign and the RIPE root server at the moment, and hopefully that should be live kind of based on Work Online a week. So those will be online on the NAP Africa Joburg exchange within the next week or so. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Without further ado, I think I will welcome questions from the floor. Yes, the gentleman from Cameroon and the person behind, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Foncham Denis Do from Cameroon. My question will go to Mr. Abdullahi of Gambia Internet Exchange Point. I'll start by saying that your presentation was very, very interesting. Generally, we know that the establishment of an Internet Exchange Point results to so many benefits, including cost savings, in performance, and many others. But I realize in your presentation that you are not benefiting from any of these advantages. And I want to believe that the reason is because the quantity of your local traffic is still very small. So my first question is, would you advise a country that still has very small local traffic to rush establishing an Internet Exchange Point just for the benefit of being happy that they have one? And then the second question is, considering that you equally said you have a lot of difficulties connecting your networks, the various networks for the providers who are in your country, to the Internet Exchange Point, I want to ask you whether you think operators and providers in your country who would have loved to connect to your Internet Exchange Point will undertake those difficulties to connect when they already know that those who are connected do not have any benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question. Of course, I will encourage every country to have an IXP. It does not come just one day. I mean, remember, our IXP is only 1 year old, and we are working on strategies to make sure that we have this content. It's just that it has not come yet. So I'm 100% sure the benefits will come. It will definitely come. But what I'm saying, as I am talking now, it has not been realized that much. It is there, but there are no tools of measurement to know that actually, like the 50 meg of traffic we have here now, how you translate that to dollars, that this is what it is saving the operators, and and that has not also been passed to the users, simply because the operators are paying their transit fee. What they were paying for transit is still what they are paying. It's not like the transit has reduced and gone local, so we have not reached there yet. But as I said in the presentation, we have strategies to bring CDNs, remote CDNs like the Google Cast, Akamai's. I'm sure once that come, maybe we will reach the 500 meg, and then we will start realizing the benefits. So for sure, I'll encourage every country to have an IXP. And your second question was like the difficulty to bring the operators together. I think any country that has an IXP will tell you they have faced this problem, but it's a challenge, and always you just find a way of going around it. We managed to bring all of them. In fact, day one, all of them filled the form and were connected. So it's not like some refuse or whatever. It's just that it took some time to persuade them, but before the IXP started operation, they all got given in to connect, and they know that they will realize the benefits. And one benefit they are getting now, right now, is that we have one landing station in the country. So if there is a maintenance, we need a backup. So our backup is a transit link to Orange, Senegal. Now what we are doing is, they are all using the IXP. They are linked to the IXP to go to use for the backup. They are using that link for the backup. So whenever the ACE goes down, they don't need to have another link to for transit, but they are using that link for transit when the ACE goes down. And they know that in future there will be a lot of benefits actually. So
yeah. Michelle wanted to react on that, and then Ben, short answers, and then.
So I think in terms of what was asked as well was the actual difference, so even if it's a small country, and one of the slides that was shown was the latency difference on both liquids as well as yours. And that's something we're seeing come up more and more and more, is how can we improve on latency, because improved latency most of the time means more money for people.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add, so you in your first year of production, you went to 50 megabits per second. Now, the first internet exchange point we were on is Zimbabwe Internet Exchange. I think it took probably 10 years for Zimbabwe to get to 50 megabits per second. So that's a success. If you go back to the graph map you showed, you know, when you were exchanging your local traffic via the incumbent, you probably had the same, because if they were all having to buy transit from the incumbent, you effectively had a monopoly IXP. So now you've gone to, you know, it's being exchanged, but things are easier. So the point is, now that the infrastructure is more developed, things are easier. You'll get your CDNs, you'll get your caches now, and then that will be, you know, it'll mean you have more benefits faster. So, you know, Michelle's talking about a customer that Skybound Malawi who joined NAP, and immediately they get 40% of their traffic or their transit traffic exchanged locally immediately by doing one connection to one IXP. Now, it took us 10 years to get to 40% of traffic. Now, we're ahead of that now. We're at 55, 60, but it's as things are more developed, you get the instant results. So you've got to give it time, and the benefits will be greater.
Hi, just an interesting observation. There are 5 of you on the panel that have spoken now.
Name?
Saul from eNetworks in South Africa. There are 5 of you on the panel. 4 of you are from East Africa / South Africa, 1 from West Africa. All East Africa's got great success stories. We're hearing about Gambia, who's starting to grow, but also mainly challenges in getting everyone connected and seeing the challenges and getting still problems with outside of the country being cheaper, etc., etc. There's been a common trend that we've been hearing over the last few days, yesterday and today, where things in West Africa just don't seem to be moving forward. In East Africa, we've got fantastic fiber throughout the country. We've got a lot of exchanges working very well. West Africa seems to be kind of forgotten in the dark ages still. How do we go about bringing West Africa in line with the rest of the continent?
Anyone on the panel wants to take just a short answer?
So, Saul, I think from a Terraco side, we've obviously looked at that area because it makes a lot of market sense. There's lots of people, etc. So I think one of the basics that we picked up is basic infrastructure. So in terms of guaranteed power, those kinds of things. So if you look at in developing a market, your step one is make sure that you can develop a proper data center. And essentially, if I had to look at like the Nigeria area, if we had to run a data center there, we would pretty much have to use our Jennies as our primary and the council power as a backup, which then becomes not really feasible from a Terraco side. So I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen.
Just to add to that is sort of one of the African Internet Exchange Association is working to sort of build capacity everywhere, and get people talking to each other. So from that point of view, really trying to get the West African countries engaged along with everyone else.
Yeah, back.
Hello, my name is Chidima Iwe, Main One, Nigeria. If I may just shed some light on the thoughts currently on the floor. Nigeria is one of the countries in West Africa, and Main One Cable is one of the companies doing, I would say, great things, along the West African region. So let's talk a bit about data centers. One of the challenges Main One had operating in the last few years has been power. So infrastructure issues are key issues in West Africa, definitely. We made some very recent findings and quite interesting as well. When we built the new data center MDXI. Initially, the design was never to put it on the grid. We were going to run it off generators, and that was the initial design. Towards the tail end of the build, there was a meeting and there was a huge debate as to if, do we really get this connected to the grid? Finally, we agreed to put it on the grid, and when we did, we were amazed at some of the results we were getting. In the last 6 months, we've had it on the grid, and we've had over 95% availability on the grid, on the national grid. This was very shocking to us, and from a cost perspective, it crashed our costs amazingly, and this is something we never expected in our wildest dreams. It puts us in a much better position in terms of service offerings in West Africa. We're a bit more convinced that a lot more can happen within the region. Infrastructure, make no mistake, infrastructure is still a challenge, but I think that there is improvements which we can draw from. Thank you.
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Aldrin Sivako from Botswana Fiber Networks. I have questions directed to Angani. The first one is regarding what do you do to influence or convince customers to host their content locally as opposed to offshore? Because I understand that the cost of hosting offshore is lower compared to in-country hosting everywhere in Africa. That is the trend. So I think if you can just tell us how do you do it to convince them, because it's purely cost-benefit issue. So I don't know if you can allow me to go into the last two questions, because they are all directed to yourself before.
Yeah, shortly but quickly. You can go.
Yeah. The second question is your cloud offering. You said in terms of packages, it's more the computer storage, capacity that you provide to your customers, without any network component. So how do you recover the costs that comes because of network costs? I think if you can also touch on that one. The last one is regarding what's your typical capacity on the servers, just for interest sake, your storage servers.
Okay, so the cost-wise, how do we convince people? And we convince guys by giving them the same cost they get outside. We've figured out our models, and right now, if you're getting a virtual machine, we're just doing a price cut and the same price as DigitalOcean, right? Which is the cheapest cloud provider out there. So the cost is no different than the cost of leasing servers from outside. We're a smaller company, so we can afford to do that. But as we scale, we believe that the same model is going to apply. As far as network costs go, like I mentioned, in a lot of countries outside, these guys are dealing with larger bits of data. We're starting out, here where the data is manageable, and we can get a gigabit port at KXP for $300, $500. As a result, as long as we can absorb that cost with our existing customers, we don't need to charge the customers a variable fee for it, right? We have a fair use policy for international bandwidth, but for local bandwidth, we don't need to charge the customers, because it just means we can go and get a bigger port when we fill that gigabit port up. So we don't see that as a problem. And then finally, the capacity of the servers. So on the compute servers, we have sort of compute nodes, and we use Dell servers. So within each chassis, you can do 4 physical nodes. You can pack in a terabyte of RAM and sort of enough onboard storage. On the storage, we run a Ceph cluster. The Ceph cluster currently is running, close to a petabyte of data, but we can keep adding capacity, because it just means we add more nodes. to it. Yeah.
Yes, Ben.
I mean, it's great to hear that hosting in Kenya is the same price as internationally. There's actually no reason it shouldn't be, because the cost of cost of renting Iraq is probably about the same. Cost of buying services is about the same. Cost of a decent sysadmins and skills is probably actually less. But even if it costs more, now I'll make a point here, because let's say it costs you $5 a month to host your website in USA, and it costs you $10 a month to host it in your country where you live. If you're a web business and you're going to set up selling web services, and this is your main portal for your business, it might seem like $5 is a lot of money extra to pay to host it locally, but you'll actually find that if you host it internationally, and as a result all the people using your website experience it's very slow and doesn't work very well because of high latency, then it's going to cost you far more than $5 a month. Right? We've got a business in Kenya called SportPesa, who are doing gambling. You're doing East African online gambling. Now, if they were to host that website in the States, they might save a little bit of money, but the user experience of actually using that website would be worse, and that would cost them tens of thousands of dollars more a month than the $5 they're saving. So you think about putting if you're a web business, put your service closer to your customers in Africa, put your service closer to them, and just on basic infrastructure, I think it's just fantastic to hear that just as South Africa's power grid is falling apart, that Nigeria is improving to 95%.
Okay. I think I will just allow everybody to say maybe one word of closing before we reach our time. And I want maybe if you can give your insights as far as end user price is concerned. All this massive gain in quality of service, cost-wise, how do we translate that to the end user? How are you seeing it? What needs to be done? Maybe Michelle and then Kyle over the... And your own closing remarks.
Okay, so I think from a South Africa or Southern Africa perspective, what we're seeing is on the bigger elephants, they're generally hanging on to that kind of profit, specifically around the peering side. And what we're actually seeing, which is fantastic, is newer entrants are having the opportunity to, by using peering and using peering effectively, to A, drop price, and B, launch really innovative products to various market segments. So I think peering has definitely been an enabler to actually grow the current market space that we sit in.
I'll follow up by saying I think we're starting to see similar things in Uganda, but perhaps not on as a dramatic scale.
I want to touch on one thing which we talked about was around customer users kind of bypassing peering. So, if you can't get Netflix in Africa, but doesn't mean that people in Africa don't want Netflix content. And as long as they've got an international credit card, they can buy that content, except their IP address isn't allowed to access Netflix because of the trust databases they use to restrict the content. But people, as soon as we go and install fibre to the home broadband in an estate in Nairobi, immediately some people then they run around to those houses and then sell them a VPN service. These are being sold locally. They're services that are based in the USA, and you get a USA IP address, and people start accessing Netflix services. There are other. This then process means you're tunneling the traffic through to non-local peering exchanges. So if the content isn't delivered locally, then people will get the content some way or other. So as the content moves locally, then that will bring down the cost. While the content isn't there locally, the costs will stay higher because of these bypass techniques.
Yeah, bring back the sysadmin. Find some young guys that you can mentor, and hopefully you can come with them next year for AFBIF.
I believe the IXP can bring reduction in costs in Gambia and also improve performance of internet. Hopefully, with the strategies that we have in place, if all is implemented, we will see a tremendous improvement. And to the other operators about West Africa, it's true there is lack of infrastructure, but you don't wait until the infrastructure is there. You should come and we build the infrastructure together. Thank you.
Well, our panelists, thank you very much for your time, your contribution, your presentations. So thank you very much for your attention as well. So see you next time. Thank you.